everybody, and welcome. I am Nancy Bauman, the book professor and owner of Bookarma, and I am really excited about our webcast today because we have a very special guest who I have been following for a long time before I actually met her in person. It's Hope Clark, and I'll give her a more formal introduction in a minute, but I'm really glad that you're going to be here with us for the next 45 minutes or so. Just to kind of give you a little familiarization, if you're not familiar with Bookarma, and I'm assuming you're all writers, and the wonderful thing about writing a book is that once you're finished, you're not really finished. You have to market your book, and it's kind of a morass of options out there for you, and it can get really confusing. And Bookarma is one very, very simple tool that you can use to get the word out about your book, actually around the globe. It's a very simple web platform. It's at bookkarma.net, and in a minute I'll put that link in our web chat. But what you do on Bookarma is kind of like the video shows. You use your ISBN, we pull all the information about your book, your book goes to a book queue, and other authors around the world with one single click share your book to their social networks. So it allows you to break through the boundaries of your own social circles and reach a global audience without having to cultivate the audience yourself. And the good news about it is right now, for the next several months, we're going through some platform enhancements. So we've made Bookarma free for you to use. So join us, go to bookkarma.net, get your books on there, and let us help you campaign those around the world. We have about over 1,000 authors from 42 different countries, so that's a pretty long reach. So anyway, I'm very, very pleased that you have joined us today because my guest is really special. I had been following Hope. Her website is Funds for Writers. And when I was just starting, so I had just graduated with my MFA and thought, I'm going to change the world and write all this stuff and make all this money. And then I started realizing that it's a little bit hard to make money as a writer if you don't know where to go or what to do or how to keep that income stream coming. And so I actually Hope, I don't know how I got connected with your website, but somehow I did. I probably Googled how to make money as a writer, and you're the first entry there. So I've been following Hope for a very long time, and then I had the real distinct pleasure of meeting her in person last March at the PubSense Author Summit, where she and I were both presenters, and it was really great to meet her because I thought, when you know people online, it's like you think they're famous and they're going to be scary, and oh my gosh, how personal she is with her Southern drawl. She's from South Carolina. And so we had a really great time that weekend at the PubSense Author Conference. And of course, a lot of people were seeking her out too. So I invited her to be on our weekly webcast because if you're a writer and you write either novels or nonfiction books, those take a long time, and maybe you need a little bit more income stream during that time, So Hope is here to share her knowledge. And I have to say, you've been awarded, the best website. What is the deal on that? Can you tell us a little bit about that, Hope? You've won awards.
Writer's Digest selects the 101 best websites for writers each year. And Funds for Writers has been chosen for the last 15 years.
Yeah, well, so there you go. So it's a very, a great resource. And I'm really glad to have you here because you're a writer and you have writers at your heart. And that's very evident in everything that I've ever heard you say, or your blogs or your broadcasts or anything. So anyway, so Hope is going to give us some tips on and some guidance on how every writer ought to be freelancing, and how the difference between crowdsourcing and grants, and how to use contests to actually accelerate your success as a writer. So anyway, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself first, Hope? How'd you get into this, and what's your story?
I went into it kicking and screaming, I'm curious. I was wanting, like you, starting out wanting to be this great writer, going to do great things, and I was still working a day job and writing at night. and started writing for the web back in the 90s when the web was new to the common folk. And I had my editor of a particular website I wrote for say, I've been asked to speak. Would you do it for me? Because I don't do that sort of thing.
Oh.
So I spoke to this little group of women writers at a Barnes & Noble in Atlanta and started talking to them about how to write for the web. And they got to moaning and groaning about how hard it is to make a dollar in this business, particularly back then. Everything was so expensive, and you had to mail manuscripts in hard form, and printers were through the roof in cost, and you couldn't afford the ink. And so I just broke down and changed my topic and said, well, let's talk about how we can make a living at this. And once I got done with that and came home, I had emails waiting, and I was trying to come home from work and write for myself. And I started answering these emails and eating up my own time, so I started a newsletter to kind of streamline it, and of course the newsletter took off. So it sort of took the place of my everyday writing. In 2 months I had 200, and in 6 months I had 1,000, and now
that's subscribers. That many subscribers, Hope?
32,000 right now.
Oh my gosh. That's definitely a success story, and then you got yourself a job, didn't you, out of that?
I did. Suddenly, I became editor of a newsletter instead of this great mystery author. But it comes around. I mean, I like to think this was all deliberate and intelligent and well planned. But I did have the sense enough to notice that this had the potential for a platform, and that was back before platform was a buzzword.
Yeah.
But I knew this business was tough to get into even back in the 90s before you had self-publishing. And I thought, well, if I become known for one thing, surely somebody will respect me in the business. So that was my whole mentality of doing it. And actually I fell in love with it because it got to be my driving focus. And I put my writing up on the shelf for a while until somebody convinced me to bring it back out.
Well, I know you're writing again because you just told me you were up till 2:30 this morning writing, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm a morning person, so I know a lot of writers get that midnight oil in. So,
but now I thoroughly enjoy Funds for Writers, and I speak at conferences both on writing fiction, on writing freelance marketing, and funding streams. So it's my three main my three-legged stool.
Three-legged stool, yeah. Tripod, that's what you're trying to think of, yeah. Well, I really respect fiction writers because I am a book coach, but I am under the title of the book professor, and I strictly work with nonfiction because I don't know. It's just, I think fiction is really, really hard. I mean, you have to have all these characters doing everything, and it has to all tie together. And anyway, so I have great respect for fiction writers because I just can't do that at all. So, anyway, well, so, tell us about this freelancing thing, because people a lot of writers are just concentrating on books. So what do they need to do to branch out a little bit?
I believe every writer ought to be freelancing. It's so wide open, but it's a way for you to develop your platform. And I scratch my head sometimes thinking, why isn't just about every writer doing this? Because it's easier to break into, and it's a quicker income stream than writing books. And you probably do this when you're counseling your clients, is that's not a quick income earner.
Oh, no.
So it takes you a while to get enough books, and I mean, several books, like 6, 8 or more, to your belt, so that you've got a respectable enough income coming in that will actually put food on your table. So I look at it as freelancing is a way to put your name out there as well as make a few dollars now instead of waiting years.
Well, okay, so what do you mean by freelancing? Because I know a lot of people write for e-zine, and that's, probably a minimal kind of a opportunity. How do you define freelancing?
Freelancing is, I look at it as short-term gigs for writers that you get paid for. We often get in a rut of wanting to write for free, which I'm a big no-no about. But
thank you for saying that, because writing is hard work. Otherwise, people wouldn't hire people to do it.
Right. The only time I would write for free is if I'm getting a very tangible, important return out of it that I can measure and see the result of. But just to write for free because somebody asked, or I think it's going to improve my platform. Chances are the places where you're writing for free aren't giving you much of a platform to start off with. And it's not necessarily respectable in the business. But freelancing means you're getting paid to do work. And when I'm speaking at conferences and teaching classes, I say, I started off just whoring myself out to anybody who pay me to write. And and it started off small and grew, but now when I counsel people, I say, okay, if you want to write for free, do it once, do it twice, move on, or ask them to pay you, and just keep moving up that line. But I'll start off with magazines because we think they're going under. Everybody talks about, there's fewer magazines, and they keep shutting the doors. No, there's as many new ones coming out as ones closing. With
do you mean print? Do you mean print magazines or online?
Both.
Or both, yeah.
Absolutely. Because your print magazines are now also online.
Yeah.
And you've got small magazines coming out that are not on the Barnes & Noble newsstand. They're trade mags, and you might think that I can't write for those because they're tied to a hobby or a profession or an expertise that you don't have. But the thing is, those magazines also need things like interviews and some evergreen topics that you can pick up and spread across several venues, such as how to use a business card. I mean, you can put that in any of a dozen different trade magazines. So it's learning how to take your career as a writer and use it to write just about anywhere. At my last conference, I took a stack of magazines and threw them out around the room, and I said, now come up with a topic for that magazine. And everyone was like, I don't know anything about scuba diving. I don't know anything about cabins. So they started whining, and I said, oh yeah, you can. Just think about what we've learned in class. And before we left out of there, everybody had a topic for that magazine. So you can pick up anything and write for it. It's a matter of, my dentist has a newsletter.
Yeah.
And I know if I walked in the door now, if I had the time, I could walk in that door now and say, Greg, let me write this thing because it's abominable.
Yeah.
And it's amazing what's out there for you to get paid to do while you're pursuing your major work in progress.
Well, it's interesting that you say that about your dentist, because people know the buzzword content. You've got to have content. And so, there's what's worse than no content, really bad content, poorly written stuff. And I know a lot of people who aren't writers really don't understand grammar and punctuation. And those of us that do, it just absolutely, it's like nails on the chalkboard when you read something like that. So anyway, so how do people find these freelance jobs? How would they go about, you said magazines, would they approach a magazine directly, or what's the whole process involved in that, Hope?
You would write a query letter, and queries are critical, but they're not impossible, and I think they scare a good many writers who are focusing on their books. Queries are usually a one-pager, and you're going to start off with either your opening paragraph or some type of hook, just like you would for a chapter, and then a paragraph as to why that story is important and fits that publication, another little paragraph with a brief bio, and then a thank you, wrap it up, I look forward to hearing from you. Or a call to action saying, please contact me and let me write this for you.
Yeah.
So that's it. It's a one-pager. It does need to be grammatically correct, written to a particular editor, and just clean as it can be. It needs to be crisp, show your best work. It's not just a request. It is representing you and how well you write. So it does need to be polished, and it needs to pop. And you pitch, and 90% of them are online now. So it's so simple. You could sit down and just pour them out.
You know,
Pick 'em up.
I think I ran across a website. Are you familiar with duotrope.com?
Yes.
Yeah, and so what I believe is it has all different publications that accept that, and they kind of give you their rules and stuff. So that, if people are having a hard time thinking of, well, where do I even know to find magazines that accept this kind of thing, that could perhaps be a good place to start. So another thing that I've heard you mention before is talking about grants. Now, is that what do we do to get grants, or is that a good idea, or is that a black hole that you can get lost in?
If you can find the black hole, I think that's the issue. Find the black hole, then yes, you could get lost in it. But grants have struggled ever since the economy tanked, a few years back. They've had trouble coming back to life because their money comes from not just people donating to them, but their own personal investments. So their income has greatly decreased. Mm-hmm. Just like you're getting less for your money in your savings account, they are too.
Sure.
So grants are fewer than they used to be. I tell everyone to start with their state arts commission, because if anybody's going to have a little bit of money, it's going to be them. And in this country, grants are happen because of the tax code. People want to do great things, but unfortunately our tax code limits donating money to nonprofits and places like that you can write them off your taxes.
Right.
If someone grants individuals, it's not a write-off.
Right.
To explain it in a nutshell. And so there's very few individual grants for the arts. They're out there. I post them in Funds for Writers, but they're not as common as they used to be. And on top of that, they're smaller than they used to be. Mm-hmm. So a good grant, you got an excellent grant if you hit $1,000 anymore. And we all know that won't self-publish your book.
Right.
And it won't do a for you.
And is that typically what writers are seeking grants for, funds to publish their books?
They are, and there's another problem there too, is most writing grants want to grant writers to write, not do the business of writing. And when you self-publish the book, you've stepped out of the artistic side, now you're in the entrepreneurial side.
Yes.
Grants don't favor that so much. So you got a problem there. A lot of people think, rightfully so, it really doesn't cost money to write, but sometimes you need to get away to write, or you need to do research to write, or you need a computer to write.
Yeah.
And you see a few grants in those areas, but to self-publish, they're few and far between.
Yeah. Well, I know I was looking at grants extensively for a while, and I just ended up spending a whole lot of time that I should have spent writing. I mean, seriously, because it was like, it just was like I said, it was kind of a black hole I got down into, and there was no, light, at the end of the tunnel, and nothing produced it. So anyway, we had a question here about crowdfunding, which is a great segue, because that's another, opportunity for writers. So what do you know about that? What's the success, stories, or is that a good option for writers?
Fantastic option. I push it all the time. When crowdfunding came around, I jumped all over that. Mm-hmm. I was talking to people saying, explain it to me. How is this working with writers? Because it didn't start with writers. It started with small businesses. And it started with individuals needing funds for their own personal emergencies. And I was going, oh, this could work. This could so work. Yeah. And then, of course, publishing got on the train. Mm-hmm. Crowdfunding is going to make you think of your project, as you should anyway, as a campaign. Mm-hmm. It makes you actually think of how to promote who you are, what you're writing, and what good your project will do for mankind, pretty much. It makes you get outside of yourself and think of your project on a grander scale. As a result, you're pitching it in a different way. Rather than a query letter, you're pitching it with video and with description and with rewards in a crowdfunding campaign, and you're stating how much money you need to earn, and in return, those pledges will get a reward for their pledge.
Yeah, and you're doing it with heart. You can really connect with the audience and just, express your passion for what you're doing too, which is different than a grant on paper, where you're, answering questions, etc.
It is. A grant is very defined. It's limited to a dollar figure.
Mm-hmm.
It can only be used for this and that, and it has to follow in line with the mission of the grantor. Crowdfunding, the sky is the limit. Mm-hmm. You can ask for $500. You can ask for $10 million. You just need to put it up there as to what you need the money for, and project personality and project your project. And not only do you earn money through the crowdfunding, but you earn followers.
Yes.
You're building a
platform. So when your book is out, obviously we had a question here, what kind of a reward would a new novel offer? I just want to speak to that for a second, and then you probably have some other ideas, but my niece did a Kickstarter campaign. She's a musical artist. She writes and records music for her second album. And, she had different, levels of what, people would get. First of all, it was, I don't know, some free cover art or something like that, or the opportunity to vote on what the title song would be, those kind of things. And then they went into different things from a, certain number of her CDs, all the way into I will come to your town and do a house concert kind of a thing. And you could really translate that into too. So, okay, you could be part of the pool of people who vote on the book cover, or you could be, get X books, or you could, I will do a book club Skype session with your book club, or I will come do a reading for you if you give me $5,000, stuff like that. So what have you seen people do for the reward part of that, Hope?
Wow, you kind of covered it all.
Oh, did I? Okay. Well, I'm just talking off the top of my head, but I saw this work. She raised more money than she needed, so she got to add extra, instrumentalists in the, music. So it's very cool.
Oh, exactly. And I know so many examples. I know a young writer who had self-published, and the book pretty much bombed. And she had the wherewithal. This is what caught my attention, because I kind of troll some of the
Good.
crowdfunding.
Yeah.
I love seeing success stories under publishing on these crowdfunding sites. But this young lady decided she was going to revamp her book and do it right. So she developed a crowdfunding program, and she put in there how she was going to hire an editor, hire a graphic designer, hire a PR expert to help her promote it. And she was doing all the right things, all the right things that you read about. And on top of that, she was just cute as a button.
Yeah. So
she did a video of herself explaining what she wanted to do. And she was just dolled up to the nines. And I couldn't help but watch her video, and I'm like, oh, honey, you are just so freaking cute. I got to contact you. And I contacted her and said, would you write about your campaign for Funds for Writers? And I pay writers.
Yeah.
And I said, I'll put what I pay writers towards your campaign, and on top of that, give you a platform to try and get people involved. And she got all her money plus some as a result of that. And she redid the book. Now, her rewards were copies of the book, copies of cover art. Now, I've seen in other campaigns where they named a character after you. They came and cooked dinner for you.
Yeah, I've heard that too. Yeah.
Your chef as well. I know if I have always dreamt of doing a crowdfunding campaign. I've got to get to the point where I have a nonfiction book I want to do for that. And I'd be more than willing to jump on a plane or drive someplace and say, hey, we'll do a private writers meeting, and hold a classroom for everybody and anybody that you know. Things like that excite people, and you can get autographed books.
Yeah, exactly.
You can just, the sky's the limit. It's chocolate. I've seen chocolate done. I've seen jewelry done. Just all types.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be related to the book either, is what you're saying. Because if you come and cook dinner for people and stuff, they just get to know you as the writer, which, that's good too, because they do want to know you. They want to be connected with you and your success. So, do you know, I have a question, because I've always wondered this. There's different platforms. I know with Kickstarter, if you don't get all the funds pledged, then you don't get any of the money. But there's other ones like Indiegogo where you get, I think you get the money you get, but you have to pay a higher percentage if you don't get the full pledged amount, I think is how that works. So do you have a preference of what platform works best?
I do, but it's probably tainted. My background was with the federal government in lending and grants. That's how I sort of started Funds for Writers, is I could talk grants when nobody else could. Kickstarter is the granddaddy of them all, and it started first and took off faster. And there's their logic behind, you have to pledge a certain amount, let's just say $2,000. And if you fall short and your pledges only reach $1,500, you get nothing.
Nothing, yes.
And you pay nothing. So if you get $2,000, $2,500, $5,000, if you go over your ceiling, that's great. Then you get it. I like that because in my head, having done, bigger projects, is that if you get less money that is in your budget, your chance of success is not good because you needed $2,000 for some reason, and if you only have $1,500, where's the other $500 coming from? But so that's the banker in me. But Indiegogo saw a need to bridge that maybe people could get only $1,500 and be successful. So they have two ways of doing it. They have an option of doing it like Kickstarter, where you pay a lesser administrative fee, if you meet your projected amount, you get it all. If you don't, you don't. And then they have Plan B, which means that you get anything that's pledged, and you just pay a higher administrative fee.
But in both cases, and that's interesting to me because there's another thing that's kind of interesting about the Kickstarter approach is that it really puts some fire under your tail to get this done, to really push to get those done. And so rather than just sitting back and we'll see what happens and I get what I get, there's a real intention and a real drive there to get across that finish line.
There is. There's another one called Pub Slush.
Right.
And I think that they were at the conference.
They were, yes, we did meet them.
And they help you not only help you crowdfund, but they help you publish, and they help you sell the book, and they help you take pre-orders for the book. So they give you an e-commerce package on top of the crowdfunding. So they're pretty innovative.
Yeah, they are. A question for you though, just about the whole idea of crowdfunding. Once you have your campaign on whichever platform you've selected, how do you get the word out? Because I think, I know you start with your circle, but how does that, what if your circle isn't very big yet?
You're going to have to work it hard. I know that's the biggest question I get on crowdfunding because it's just like any platform. It's trying to sell your book, trying to make a name for yourself as a copywriter or a screenplay writer. It is hard to get off the ground, and grant you that. Now, being on a crowdfunding campaign will get you some people anyway because they're people like me that troll them, look for good projects. So the most important part is to have this fantastic page on these crowdfunding sites because that in and of itself will attract some. But that means, other than that, every single day you need to be online somewhere, whether it's social media or getting your friends to mention it. But you need to keep word of mouth spreading what you're doing because each little person helps, and you don't know who's going to contribute $1 and who's going to contribute 1,000.
Right. And I know I've seen a lot of these on Facebook, and my friends will say, help me, and if you can't give, please share, and so that's, a way to try to get things to kind of go beyond your network. But it's work. It's a campaign. It's not, there's nothing out there in social media or anything that you can just stick something out there. It's not if you build it, they will come. They will not come if you build it. They won't. And so you work it. And it has to be, I would say, if you're going to do something like this, be all in. Make this your priority. It's usually a 30-day period when it's live. So obviously you have to put the time into it to build the campaign and to do your videos and have that, to be very engaging, but be all in for that 30 days and just mention it. And the other thing too is like one of the things I've discovered on Twitter is that it's okay to post the same thing at multiple times during the day. You got an entirely different audience at noon than you did at 8. People don't sit around on Twitter just reading their feed all the time. So if you want to be out there multiple times, and it's selling yourself. Authors, we don't like that. We don't want to broadcast about ourselves. We just kind of want to sit in the room and write, but it just doesn't work that way. So you have to get a little bit out of your comfort zone.
I've got a good example just this week. Somebody pitched me and said, this is my memoir I'm writing. I have a Pub Slush campaign. Would you be interested in mentioning on your social media? Well, my social media has a reach. Mm-hmm. So the fact that she put herself out there and pitched herself to me impressed
took the risk.
It is. And so I did. I threw it out on Twitter and Facebook. I did it twice yesterday to give her a hand. Hopefully that got her a few more supporters. But just ask. Ask.
Yeah. And sometimes that's just the hardest thing to do, because we want people to offer, but you know how it is. People aren't thinking about you; they're thinking about themselves. So if you bring it up to their attention, people are willing to help you. That's why crowdfunding even got a start. So anyway, so the last thing that I wanted to talk to you about is contests. And can you kind of tell us if they're valuable, or what is the value of contests?
Just like everybody ought to freelance, everybody ought to periodically submit to a contest. Mm. It's how I used contests as a barometer to know when my novel was ready to start pitching. Mm. So I'm a success story in itself, in that I started entering my novel, published as Low Country Bride now, to novel contests, first line contests, first chapter contests, all around the country to see if I could place. And I thought if I could place several times in several different contests with totally different judges looking at this, mm-hmm. then I might have a voice ready to start pitching to the world. And I won a first line contest. I won a chapter contest. I was a runner-up in the Amazon Breakthrough Novel Award. And so when I started getting these girls, you did great, I thought, okay, now I feel confident enough to pitch agents. Mm. And I could then put those contests in my pitch letter to my agents.
Of course. Mm-hmm.
So it gave me credibility, and it gave me confidence to be able to pitch, knowing I'm not waiting to see if I'm good enough, if some agent's going to slam me down, because I already know I'm good enough, mm-hmm. because I've won contests.
Yeah.
And it worked. It worked. I mean, it took a good number of agents. This day and time, you're not going to pitch 6 agents and land one. I pitched 72 before I landed one. Mm-hmm. And each time my pitch letter got better, and I learned what works in one and what doesn't work, and finally found my agent. But contests are a good judge of how well you're doing, but they also are like being published. They are a clip in your portfolio to put on any type of query.
Yeah, so I always thought of contests as something that you win after the book is published. But what you're saying is that this is the pregame, right? Or can be. So where do we find I see this is a whole different world to me. I don't know anything about contests. So, I know in the back of Writer's Digest magazine they have contests and stuff, but where is there a central repository of, places you can submit to contests?
No.
Could you start that, please, Hope?
Well, I could say Funds for Writers. Actually, what we started out as being experts in grants, and it's morphed into experts for contests and freelance writing. Mm-hmm. So there's not a contest out there I do not know. I can just about say that and stand behind it. If you throw a new one at me, I'll be surprised.
Yeah, you look pretty confident there, so. Because you've submitted to all of them, right?
I've submitted to a lot of them, but I also vet them before I put them in my Funds for Writers. Yeah. I've turned them down. I have now the contest come to me and say, would you put me in your newsletter? And I've turned them down when I realized they didn't pay enough on their prize money, or their entry fees were too high, or I didn't like the fine, little fine wording in their contract that they were taking all rights, that type of thing. So when I post them in Funds for Writers, they have been vetted. But there are some that have been out there for 20 years and some that are brand new this year. And I stand behind contests. I know it's hard to say I don't want to spend a lot of money on entry fees. At least enter one a month.
Yeah.
At the most, you're talking $20 or $25.
Yeah.
Now, and could be as little as $5.
Well,
and if your poetry,
I'm sorry.
As $2.
Yeah, I was going to just say that writers are normally very cautious about paying to enter into something, and it kind of gets back to what you said a little bit beforehand, because now we're talking about books, right? Not articles. So, but you need to invest in this. This is not just your time and your, writing the book, but you have to put the hat on that this is a business. If you want your book to sell, if you just wrote the book for your own personal satisfaction, maybe friends and family, then that's great too. You know what your purpose is. But most writers write to be read, and we'd like to be widely read. And so if you want to get yourself out there, you're going to have to establish some sort of a budget for making yourself known. There are over 1 million books published every year. And self-publishing is our friend, but everybody's made it their friend. And so there's a lot of books, and you have to find a way to get your needle to rise to the top of the haystack. And it takes an investment of your time and money. And that's what I like about what you all offer, Hope, is resources that are vetted and processes that have worked for other people. And you're keeping your ear to the ground so that you can communicate that information to other writers. So is there a specific place do you have a list of all the contests, or is it through blogs or something that we should look through, or?
Well, the website, fundsforwriters.com has a long list, and I update it once a week.
Okay.
It doesn't have all the contests on it because, of course, I would like you to look at the newsletters too. And I have a free newsletter that comes out every Friday. That's the one that goes to 32,000 people. I also have a paid subscription for those that are very serious. And you do have to be serious because it's so many opportunities in that newsletter that I've had people unsubscribe because they couldn't keep up with it. But I normally list 15 to 30.
Oops, did we lose your audio there?
There we go. I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
But I normally list 15 to 30 contests in that paid subscription, and it comes out every 2 weeks. There's just so many. I actually cannot put them all.
Yeah.
In my website, and they come from different areas, and some are genre related, some are literary, some are poetry, and some are full novels and manuscripts, and it's just so many these days. But they are just fantastic opportunities. And when somebody contacts me and says, I don't know where to start, I'll say, well, you can start the contest.
Yeah. Well, and that's it. We are in an information overload, era. And, in fact, in my email, I just went through and I was looking at all this stuff. I'm like, unsubscribe. I just had too much email. And so now I just have a select few newsletters that are highly valuable to me that I, did not unsubscribe to because they provide such rich information like yours does. But even on this webcast, we may be confusing people, and they're writing books and they just want to write their book, and now they're hearing about freelancing and Kickstarter campaigns and crowdsourcing and contests and stuff. So they seem to be confusing or time consuming. And so can you, kind of in closing, can you give us a final thought on why it's worth their time?
Yes, because I fight the absolute same battle. I go through about 500 emails a day and to keep up with the business. But I also have a contract for my mystery series, so I'm having to write as well, and I freelance on the side. So it's I understand the frustration. There's so much information out there, and I get overloaded. it's a matter of picking your favorites and sticking to them, but write first. Don't let it get to the point that it's interfering with your writing. When your writing is ready, then you're going to have to focus more into it. Of course, have a website of some type or a blog or a home base. You need a home base online. But once you've got that up and you update it periodically, then focus on the writing. Focus on the writing and get it to where it's polished and it's pretty and it's good, because too many people are getting jerked into this business and just pulled into it by I'm going to make you rich and you can do this and you can do that and there's this tool and that tool and to the point that you feel pushed to publish quick. And
don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. I tell the people I coach, because we're working on nonfiction, it's going to take at least a year. And granted, the people I'm working with are busy professionals, so they have other, occupations and all. It takes so long to write well because, you'll pull it out of the drawer in a week and think, I can't believe I wrote that. Look at all those gerunds and all that, all these adverbs and all that kind of stuff. It just takes a lot of, grilling through it. So fast is never better in writing. So anyway.
I do want to let people know that my email is wide open. It's probably why I have 500 things.
I was going to say, that's why you got so many emails.
I answer all my email. I answer all of it. So if you just got a taste of today and you're not sure where to go with it, do feel free to email me. I mean, it's simple. It's hope@chopeclark.com or hope@fundsforwriters.com, either one. And, if you want to take this another step further, and hopefully I didn't confuse you.
I'm typing your web address in right now, not your email address, but your web address for Funds for Writers. Oops, I forgot the little dashes in there, so ding, ding. That should be a direct link. It's such a great resource. And Hope, thank you so much for being with us today. I really appreciate your time, and not just the time today, but all the time over the past 15 years and beyond, where you have really dedicated yourself to passing on really rich and valuable information to writers to help us be successful and to be able to pursue the thing that we love. So anyway, thank you for being my guest, and we'll talk soon.